Hi, Ryan here. I can't start this video out with a normal intro. I have to actually start it out with a disclaimer, and it can't be a text disclaimer because, to be honest, the people that the disclaimer is for are not going to read it. So here's why I have to do this. In Canada, this is a $1,000 guitar. And in Canada, this is a $9,500 guitar. When you put Epiphone and another guitar brand, even the guitar brand that owns it and then is trying to sell it, or even like, if you put it in the thumbnail or just the title itself, what it does is it actually turns grown men into Greta Thunberg. And you just get, how dare you? How dare you? So I promise you in this video, I'm not going to try and say that this is not a guitar. I firmly believe that this is a guitar, and I firmly believe that this is a guitar. And I'm not going to tell you that one is better for you than the other, because to be honest, that's up to you, your wallet, and what's left over in your wallet, and your hands, to be honest. And I really don't care. So today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we take a look at the differences. There's no playing, it's just talking, but we take a look at the differences between the Epiphone Les Paul Standard 60s and the Gibson Custom 1960 Les Paul Standard. This is actually a Murphy Lab light aged. So stated at the beginning of the video, this is just talking. I'm just going to, we're going to take the covers off the control cavities, we'll take a look at the wiring, we'll take a look at the capacitors, we'll take a look at the potentiometers, we'll take a look at the tuners, we'll take a look at all of the different things here. But if you're looking for playing, because this is going to be such a long video and I don't want interruptions, I just want basically point. There's no playing. But if you want to see a comparison playing video, then take a look at the channel tomorrow. I'll put out a video where I do 5 recorded sound samples, at least a minute to 2 minutes each, with just A being this guitar and this guitar in a recording scenario. That way you can hear the differences, in a mix at least. And the last thing here, I'm very happy that this is a Murphy Lab, for the simple fact that I don't have to talk about what Gibson currently uses as VOS, because it's not what they hold the copyright for, which is vintage original specification. It's to actually differentiate regular to Murphy Lab. So this is not a VOS finish. This is a Murphy Lab ultralight finish. Thank God. Because really, the nerds that are there, I'm a big guitar nerd, by the way, but those nerds, they're worse than Greta Thunberg. Okay, with all of that stupidity out of the way, let's actually take a look at the differences between both of these guitars. Obvious things, this is Chinese made, this is American made, in the custom shop, in a specialty department in the custom shop. So there's definitely going to be some price differences there. It's the labor and the materials that are used here are a little more cost effective than what goes on here with this, because obviously this is American made, so you're paying American staff, and again, specialty department inside a specialty department. So there's different things like that. But I'll touch on the woods and stuff like that after we talk about all of the different spec differences and everything. So let's start out with the finishes. So the Epiphone here uses a gloss polyurethane finish, whereas the Gibson Custom uses, it's actually called a Murphy Lab Ultra Light Finish. So that means that there's checking and stuff like that put into the body, and it is a gloss nitrocellulose finish. It is supposed to be sort of a simulated aging. So that means that it's lighter coatings or what have you of the nitro finish than on the regular Gibson USA. Both guitars have slab mahogany backs and maple tops. Now, the Gibson Custom here has a single piece lightweight mahogany. It's still a heavy guitar. Lightweight mahogany and a two-piece hand-selected, and this is a chevron pattern, and it is also sort of flip-matched or plitch-matched rather than your regular traditional book-matched, which I know, great, wonderful. Whereas this guitar right here has a AA flame maple top. Now, I don't know how many pieces, because the flame that's here is actually a veneer. So we have like a thin coating of maple, like sort of like a paper overlay of maple that's actually placed on here and glued on top, that has a flame. The veneer also covers how many pieces of maple are used on the top. The back here, though it does look nice and figured, is also a veneer. So I tried to get, like it's really hard to get it, but I did some B-roll where I tried to get it because it's a darker color for the veneer and then a lighter color underneath. So it is a veneer on the back. This is not what the actual wood looks like. Epiphone uses that to hide the amount of wood that's used here and the what the wood actually looks like. So it's not like as figured, but to be honest, if you like the way that it looks on the back and like the way that it looks on the front, then who really cares, right? And also, it does not look like the sides have a veneer, although I have heard that they have done that in the past. And I won't get a B-roll of this, but it kind of looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, 4 pieces of mahogany. So this is a 4-piece back. Both guitars have mahogany necks. The custom here is a single piece mahogany neck, and it's actually attached to the body with a long tenon. So I'll hopefully put what that long tenon would look like here. The Epiphone, however, is a mahogany neck, but you'll actually see there's a joint at the bottom here where it meets the body to help it actually connect into the body here. It's a lot easier to see on this one because it is a darker color, or sorry, a lighter color and a darker color on the bottom at that joint. It also is attached via a short tenon. The Epiphone has a bound Laurel fretboard that has the pearloid trapezoid inlays. If you also look on the side, it does not have the fret nibs. Now, I did mention this in the Epiphone versus the Gibson USA video, but I have to mention this again, and I have to say this because some people are going to get upset at what I say, but I have to preface this by saying I've rented a couple of Epiphones, and I've played a couple of Epiphones in the store. This is the only one that I have played that has this distinction, I guess you would say. But the fret ends here are rather sharp. They are actually sharp enough to where a high E string will more than likely, after a couple of months of cold, warm, it will actually snag the high E string. But my big concern is because I like to bend and move my hand around quite a bit, because I got a lot of energy, I may actually cut my hands on this guitar. But again, I have to reiterate here, I've not played another Epiphone or rented another Epiphone that has this. So this is just an anomaly to me, but because I am noticing it, I have to note. The Gibson Custom here has a bound rosewood fretboard with aged cellulose nitrate inlays. They're trapezoid inlays as well. Just a heads up here, that is actually flammable to work with cellulose nitrate. So it's a good thing it's not on the Epiphone. I mean, it doesn't mean that, if you get a really hot solo that this thing's gonna light on fire, or will it? With the binding here, the Murphy Labs actually are able to round off the fretboard just a little bit more when they do that aging process. So it's going to be slightly more rounded, but because it is ultralight, not like a ton in comparison to like a regular VOS custom shop. We also do have the fret nibs on these frets here. Now, some people don't like the fret nibs. Some people call them nubs or nibs or nubbies. But one of the things that I've heard about, I mean, I've probably heard from like 5 or 10 people over the last, I don't know, 10 years. But with the changing of seasons and stuff like that, where moisture comes in, comes out, and the wood expands and retracts and stuff like that, there's a couple of people who have experienced in the past where the fret nubs have actually come loose, and that would cause your, high E string to actually kind of get caught in between them. I have not experienced that myself. I've always had a very, extremely stupidly large collection of Gibson guitars. I've never experienced it myself, but just because I've never experienced it doesn't mean it can't happen and won't happen. Now, because we've talked about the binding on the necks here, I do want to talk about the body binding really quickly. And it's one of those things where you really just have to ask yourself whether or not the process actually matters to you, because the Epiphone uses like a traditional, like you cut a channel in and then you place, you glue it in and stuff like that, and just make sure it doesn't come loose and stays tight. I've actually read before that they have painted them on. This does not look like it's painted on. It looks like actual binding. Whereas the Gibson Custom, just like the Gibson USA, they have specially trained individuals that do rope binding. So it's something that's really neat to see, but to a lot of people don't even know that that's the process of how it's done, so does it really matter? Kind of a things. The Epiphone has a Graphtec nut, whereas the Gibson Custom has a nylon nut. Now, to a lot of people, people are going to think that I'm talking about like stockings, like ladies' stockings. That's not the case. This is a very rigid nylon. Now, I gotta count them really here. I have 8 Gibson Custom Shop reissues that have nylon. I have not experienced any tuning issues or any weird issues with the nylon. However, it is something of note that I have read in the past where people didn't like the nylon nut and they had it replaced. So, I mean, I could think that I have 8 anomalies, but it could just be down to preference, or those people have had bad ones. I'm not sure, but I want to mention it here that Graphtec, nylon, and some people don't like the nylon. On the front of the headstock is where you will find the inlaid Epiphone logo on the Epiphone and the silk-screened Les Paul model logo. I don't know if the Epiphone is actually inlaid. Sort of in the right light, it kind of looks like it might be, but it also could be like a decal. I can't tell. I've tried to find out in the past, and I've gotten an answer of yes and no. On the front of the headstock here on the Gibson is where you will find the, again, aged cellulose nitrate Gibson inlaid logo here, and the silk-screened Les Paul model. You're also going to note on the front of the Epiphone, we have that Bell-style 3-screw truss rod cover, and it actually says standard on it. Whereas the Gibson Custom Shop, it's a historic kind of reissue, so it has the different truss rod cover than the USA one, and it is a 2-screw connection. And it doesn't say standard. On the back of the headstock is where we will find the tuners. So on the Epiphone here, just like the Gibson USA model, it's treated like a hot-rodded Gibson, 1960s Gibson. So even though it should actually have tuners, they treat it like, hey, we have tuners that were typical upgrades that some artists made from the historic type tuners. So that's why we're looking at Grover Rotomatics non-locking 18-to-1 tuners. Now, in the comparison between this and the Gibson, I did note these are not the same tuners. These are just a little lighter, and even the indentations on the tuners themselves, they look different, like where the buttons go in to actually turn around with the tuners. They look very different. They hold their tune very well. They're very highly functioning, but I have to note they're different. On the Gibson Custom, we have Kluson Vintage Deluxe double ring tuners. So in the 60s, they actually switched to the double ring. When it says double ring, it means there's 2 rings at the bottom of the tuning button. One thing that you really have to notice and note here is that there's a different sizing on the tuners. So the Epiphone here uses a modern sizing tuner. The Gibson uses a vintage sizing tuner. The reason you would want to know that is if for some reason on the Epiphone or the Gibson Custom you wanted to swap out tuners to like a more modern locking tuner, it's extremely easy to do on the Epiphone. Whereas you have to widen each of the 6 holes on the Gibson Custom to be able to do that, unless you're using Kluson Revolution locking tuners, because those are just drop-in tuners for these, but they have to be the vintage sizing. Now, taking a look at the back of the headstock, once again, the Epiphone, a lot of people, when they talk about the headstock, they talk about how it's different, how it's a little longer and stuff like that. But what I generally point the attention to, because everyone says it's the exact same construction, would be the fact that the Epiphone has a scarf joint on it. Now, scarf joints have been around for a very, very long time. It's not something that's, like, you don't really frown on it, right? You know what I mean? It's something that has been around for a long time. It's tried and true. It's just not something that they generally do on Gibsons. So when you look here, you'll actually see there's a different color on the back of the headstock than there is on the neck, because that's how the headstock is technically attached. If you look on the back of the headstock here on the Gibson, it's one piece. And the funny thing is here, some people are hoping that I forget to do this again, like I did in the Les Paul Special USA versus the Epiphone. And that is the headstock break angle. So the degree of the headstock angle on the Epiphone is a 14-degree angle. It's a 17-degree angle on the Gibson. So this is very important for a lot of people, and it's actually of benefit in ways for the Epiphone, depending on how you like your string tension and stuff like that. Some people they don't like as much tension. That's perfect on the Epiphone here, because that actually relaxes the break angle from the nut to the tuner, which means it's less likely that things will get bound in the nut. So there's less tension on the nut here. So that means that there's a greater chance of tuning stability. Because we have a more aggressive, by 3-degree aggressive, break angle here on the headstock on the Gibson, that means there's a larger chance of things binding in the nut when there's slack around the post and stuff like that. Now, the way that I was taught to tune was to tune up to pitch, never down to pitch, and then like tug on your strings. What that does is it takes the slack out that's around the post and takes whatever's binding out in the nut. So I never really knew that there was a big headstock angle issue gate thing with Gibsons, because I don't usually have tuning stability issues because of that. Now, when I was talking about tension here with regards to the 14-degree versus the 17-degree, it just means naturally the Gibson will have more tension in the strings than the Epiphone. A lot of people do what's called top wrapping. So on their stop bar here, they'll actually wrap the strings around it, and it'll come at a more natural angle going through the tune-o-matic, and what that does is it eases the tension and makes your strings a little slinkier and just a little lighter feeling. So if you're someone who likes lighter strings, that's really good on the Epiphone. On the Gibson, you might want to top wrap, or I don't know, maybe get thinner strings. So the other way around, with the Epiphone, if you want more tension, generally what you would do is you would put your stop bar all the way down, right? That will actually increase the tension here. You can even raise your bridge, but that's going to really change the action. But the only thing here is the posts or the bushing for the stop bar here on the Epiphone is protruding rather than recessed. That means you can't put it all the way down to the body. So you can't get like max tension, I guess you could say. But again, you can just up your string gauge and that'll resolve that issue. Next up, we'll take a look at the knobs. Because yes, we have to talk about the knobs here because it's the 60s, right? So on the Epiphone, we have gold top hat knobs with the silver inserts. One thing that people will note here, these are different knobs than the ones that are on the Gibson USA because the numbers and the lines are thicker white. On the Gibson Custom here, this is where things get nerdy because the knobs are like sourced. So like this is where they use like particular pieces and stuff like that. So the knobs here are, and I will probably say this wrong, amber butyrate top hat knobs with the silver inserts. I think it's butyrate. Both also have pointers, which I'm a guitar nerd. I love pointers when it comes to the knobs because it really helps you when you're using your volume and your tone. It just really does. Both have three-way toggle switches. I'm going to take the cover off the back and we'll just take a look at them. Also, I will bring your attention to the Gibson Custom here to show you the medallion. And as someone who did not own a custom shop reissue for a very long time, this was like super cool and super important, I thought, for some reason. But after owning them, I always forget that they come with the medallion. But let's take the covers off here, and this is what the Epiphone three-way toggle switch looks like. It's just labeled as an Epiphone three-way toggle switch, and then this is what the toggle switch looks like on the Gibson Custom. They're different, they do the same thing. You know, for some reason your switch is broken, $10 to fix it. $10. Now that we've done that, let's turn these suckers back around and we'll take a look at the potentiometers here. So with the cover off on the Epiphone, you'll note that we have CTS potentiometers. It does look like a little bit of a rat's nest, and it's a little weird because what you're seeing here is the potentiometers are soldered. Cool, right? But then they're connected to quick connects. So that means the pickups that are in here are quick connect pickups. Doing the same on the back of the Gibson Custom here, you'll note that things look a little different. So we do have the CTS audio taper potentiometers. Things look a little cleaner here. There's no quick connects. This is just like a very nicely done wiring and soldering. Now, let's take a look at the capacitors really quickly, because on the back of the Epiphone, once again, if you take a look, we just have a small generic red capacitor. It's very small. This is what it looks like on the Gibson Custom Shop. So we have here like the Bumblebee capacitor. So we have, like, it's called paper and oil as well. So it's a very, very different capacitor. Now, what I like to note here, because I'm still amazed at the amount of people that don't understand this, but if your volume or if your tone is set to 10, capacitor is not in the signal. It's closed off through the potentiometer. So to all the guys, it's always a Jackson. The metal players that got a Jackson and they didn't like it until they changed out the capacitors and their tone's still set to 10. Whatever works for you. If you feel better, that's better. The last thing I'll note here, because these are 60s, the wiring here, so where the what lug that it's going from the tone, from that to the capacitor to the volume itself, what lug it's on the volume there, is modern wiring on the Epiphone. Whereas on the Gibson Custom, we're actually using 50s wiring. So that's a little different, and it affects your tone affects your volume, whereas it doesn't really do that on the modern. There's just a little more control over the 50s wiring, but some people, when in a high gain scenario, not me, because I use all of my reissues with 50s wiring for high gain, they can note sometimes there's a little bit of extra treble built into it. Now all of those things combined control your pickups. So on the Epiphone here, we have the Epiphone ProBucker 3 in the bridge and the Epiphone ProBucker 2 in the neck. These are Alnico 2 pickups, and I don't think they're bad whatsoever. Little on the trebly side a lot of times, but still very highly musical, highly usable, great pickups. The Gibson Custom here has the Custom Buckers. These are Alnico 3 pickups, and again, these here, well, not again, but these are a little more of a flatter response. They're not hot or anything like that, but they have this really nice, sweet top end. If you have the Epiphone and you're worried about the fact that these are flat response and they have a sweet top end and these are a little different, have a little more treble built into them, you can either swap out your pickups very easily, and it's affordable to do. You can even do it on your own, but you might burn your fingers the first few times you do soldering. But you can also just go to your amp and make those adjustments on your settings, and you'll be all right. Next up, we'll take a look at the bridge. And when it comes to the Epiphone bridge, I have to also make a note of something I have noticed with all of the Epiphones that have the same bridge. Now, we do have the Epiphone Locktone Tune-o-matic bridge. It's sort of like a Nashville style bridge. So we've got 3 saddles going one way, 3 saddles going the other way. It's not really like thick like some of the Nashville bridges. It's metric sizing, so that means you're actually going to be able to put a flathead screwdriver in here and make your adjustments really easily that way. And we also have a stop bar. Like I said earlier, it's like the Gibson Custom isn't recessed like the USA, but it's not like really protruding a lot. Whereas the Tune-o-matic here, there's quite a bit protruding here that prevents it from actually going down further into the body. Now, what I wanted to note here on the Epiphone Locktone, and I have to mention it because I've noticed it on basically every Epiphone that I've played that has it, and that's the saddles here. I don't have a lot of confidence in them. So what's happening on this one, and I can't pick it up with the microphone, and it's only acoustically. You don't notice it if you're playing electrically, right? But if you're playing it acoustically, there's buzzing on the B here, on the saddle for the B. And when I was actually intonating it, because this did not come intonated, intonation's very easy to do, by the way. But when I was adjusting the saddle, oh, it did not feel good. It just did feel like the materials that were used in this bridge were not the greatest. And it is something that if I were to buy this guitar, I would immediately upgrade the bridge. Now, the bridge is metric sizing. I don't know how many times I've had to say metric sizing for like overseas guitars. If it's not a US guitar, it's not imperial sizing, it's metric sizing. So if you have like a Chinese, Korean, Indonesian guitar that has this Tune-o-matic on it, or a Tune-o-matic in general on it, chances are it's just metric sizing, and a lot of people use like Tone Pros, Faber, things like that. You can get a replacement bridge relatively inexpensive. You can pull it out, put the new, the new parts in there. You just screw them right in, and then you put your bridge in, and you just have to intonate it. If you Google or YouTube how to intonate, it's super stupid easy to do. You need a flathead screwdriver, and you need a tuner, and a little bit of patience. The Gibson Custom here has the ABR1 bridge. This has nickel-plated brass saddles as well, so that's not on the USA. It's definitely not on the Epiphone, and it also has the stop bar. Now, this is because this is a Murphy Lab and also the VOS stuff. It is simulated aged, so you're going to actually see that it looks a little tarnished. That is done on purpose. The other difference here between the bridges would be the way that they're connected. So if we take a look here on the Epiphone, the bridge is actually connected through what I like to call a metal doweling system. A lot of people call it just a metal bushing system, but it's connected through a dowel. So you can see here, if you're looking at it, it goes into a metal bushing on the inside of the body. Taking a look at the Gibson Custom here, it is drilled directly into the body. Now, for a lot of Gibson USA players, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, that's not right. For some Gibson USA players, because you know what, we pay a lot of money for those guitars, there is this point of contention where the belief is, you know what, we should have it drilled directly into the body with the Gibson USA for the price that's being paid, but it should be totally understandable on the Epiphone. Does it affect playability? I don't think so. Does it increase vibrations and stuff like that, and maybe you know, give you a little bit of a nicer feeling when you're playing, more connection? It's very much possible. I do believe so, but I don't know because I haven't ordered a custom shop specially without it. And you know what I mean? It's hard to narrow down certain things on why this feels the way that it feels. And there's one more thing that I want to touch on, and then I'll talk about some of the extra nerdy stuff with this to get that out of the way. And then we'll talk a little bit about the woods that are used in this guitar here as well. And then I'll probably just reiterate the fact that it does not matter which one you buy as long as you like playing it. So I've been thinking of sort of making this, or just this type of video with the Gibson USA for a while, because I'm always asked. For some reason, when you have the Gibson USA and you have like a, you know, like small YouTube channel, not big at all, thankfully, but people for some reason think you also own the Epiphone, and they go, whoa, hey, what's the difference between your Epiphone Standard 60s and your Gibson Standard 60s? So I've always had the thought of making this type of video with that. And I've over the years, I've actually done research on the Epiphone version, this and the 50s, just to get certain information. It's really hard for some of it. But over the years, I've seen some times where it says, hey, it comes with a gig bag. And most of the times it just says gig bag optional. You can buy one. So when I rented this from Long & McQuaid, and not my typical Long & McQuaid, I went to a different one, and they're not the greatest. The guy was nice, but you could tell it was a little inconvenient with me, you know, wanting to do something. But I asked, does this actually come with a gig bag? And he said, no, but I'll get you one because you're renting it. So I got like a generic gig bag with it. So this comes with a cardboard box. It also means you're not paying for an Epiphone branded gig bag. There's a ton of budget-friendly gig bags that are very supportive, and you would have a lot of confidence in using them. Budget-friendly, still. There are no-name guitar cases that are fantastic that are, again, very budget-friendly. So instead of, you know, being charged like an extra $50, $100, or $150 on top of the price of this guitar, you could just go like buy a $60 case or $100 case that would probably be better than the one that's provided. The Gibson Custom. This is a little different. So I want you to let this kind of sink in here, and then I'll go and get the case and everything that comes with it. Because when I bought this guitar, I didn't just buy this guitar. I didn't, you know, go, hey, here's $9,500 plus Canadian taxes for this guitar, and they gave me the guitar. It's no, hold on here, I got to go get everything else that comes with it. So just keep in mind, I paid for everything. It's built into the price of the guitar. So here's the case that comes with the Gibson Custom. It's a lift-in 5-latch case. Here's what the inside of the case looks like. It even has its own pillow. And here is what comes inside the case. So again, keep in mind, all of this stuff is built into the price of the guitar, whether I wanted it or not. We have the keys to the case. We have the regular toggle switch cavity control cover. We have like a warranty card information that has the serial number and stuff on the back. We have a hang tag for the strings. We have a hang tag showing all of the different things, like the handmade Lux paper and oil capacitors, the vintage taper audio potentiometers, the Switchcraft classic selector switch and output jack, and the 59 replica unpotted custom buckers. Then we have the warranty information and the checklist that's not actually signed by that Tyler guy. All my other ones I think are. But this checklist here, when you get this in the Gibson USA, this is what they consider the warranty card, or the certificate of authenticity. We have a hang tag just saying that this is a Gibson custom. We have an additional switch tip, and then we have additional period correct like hang tags and stuff like that. And then we have the actual certificate of authenticity. This is particular to, or specific to, the Murphy Lab. So it has like all the checking sort of on the outside of it. So this actually shows the serial number and such in here. So it's very important to note, I paid for all of that. It's all built into the price of the guitar, whether I wanted it or not. So when it comes to like the cover, like the medallion cover for the 3-way toggle switch, that's just like, I got another one and I paid for the other one, even though I'm not going to change it and keep the medallion on there, right? Because at one point I thought it was important, even though I forgot about them afterwards. I got another switch tip. It's amber. I mean, it's darker. Cool. I don't know that I needed another one, but like all of those things are built into the price. That's not the case on the Epiphone. So the last two things I'm going to talk about here, I'm going to talk about the woods on the Epiphone, and then I will list off some of the very nerdy things on the custom shop that just, jack up the price. So when it comes to the wood on an Epiphone guitar, I showed you that there's veneers, right? So we have the veneer in the front, the veneer in the back. From what I can tell at looking at the side, because there's no veneer on the side on this one, it's 4 pieces of wood. From the side, it looks all right. But that wood there and the laurel. A lot of people, when they see, like when they buy an inspired by Gibson guitar now, most of them actually say, mine actually came with rosewood, not laurel. So mine's more important. It is actually still laurel. It just means they've sourced better laurel. Laurel used to be this really weird wood that felt sort of cardboardy and very, very flat. And oddly, sometimes white, even if you use some lemon oil on it. It took a while to get some of that white out. Nowadays, you actually see some of the pores like you would on rosewood, and it's a little more figured. But it is still laurel. Also, when it comes to the fact that it's, like I said, it looked like a 4-piece mahogany body. It's important to note that this is something that's listed on the Epiphone website right here, okay? When it comes to their specs. So when it comes to the wood that's being used, it just means that it's in the mahogany family. When they used to use rosewood, it just meant the wood was in the rosewood family. So what that means is they could have got a deal on like a bunch of stock of NATO, which is in the mahogany family. And they've used that. So it just means that there could be more variance in the weight than there would be on like the selected lightweight mahogany on the Gibson Custom Shop. So there's higher standards and requirements for the woods for the Custom Shop. The really cool thing is, and it's another big point here, same thing with laurel, people thinking their laurel fretboard is a rosewood fretboard. When it comes to Gibson SGs, for the most part, they're 2-piece bodies. But every now and then, it seems like, hey, there's a 1-piece body. That happens, and usually it's because the wood didn't meet spec to go into the custom shop, so it actually came over to the Gibson USA, and at that point, it's like, hey, you're going to save money on glue, so they get a one piece. But just like Epiphone uses veneers and stuff like that, and they're good at hiding how many pieces of wood are in the body, Gibson's very good at hiding seams. I am still suspicious on my Gibson USA SG Standard 61 with Maestro Vibrola, because when I look at it, it sort of looks like there's a seam, but it disappears halfway up. Even then, like, am I seeing things? So things like that do happen. The reason I'm saying that is Epiphone is less selective over their woods, especially how they look, because they use veneers or they use solid colors to actually hide the amount of wood. It's still good sounding wood. Visually, looking at this and then looking at this, you can kind of tell there's a big difference in the quality of wood when it comes to figuring. So that is part of that process or reasoning why there's a huge price difference. So instead of just saying, okay, we've got this wood, we need a kind of Frankenstein, not Frankenstein, I don't want to say Frankenstein it. We have to put it together and it's going to be this big, we'll glue it all together, and then once it's good, then we'll cut it out and it'll be a guitar. They have people that source their wood, and then when they bring it in, they individually weigh the wood and they actually grade the wood and stuff like that. You don't have to do that on the Epiphone, so you don't have to pay someone from America to do that process and then say this one here is going to be a 59, this is going to be a 58, this is going to be a 60, this is, you know what I mean. Now, both of them are still guitars. They're still guitars. So if you go to the store, and I did not want to play a reissue because of their pricing, 30 years I stayed away from them. 30 years I stayed away. And then I made a mistake. And then I made 7 other mistakes after that. Probably more soon. But if you go to the store and you play the Epiphone and you go, whoa, you know what? This sounds fantastic. I really am connecting with the guitar. It feels like this should be my guitar. And you go and buy that guitar, you're in the right. If you play the Gibson and you don't like the feel of the Nitro, or you go, I can't really tell much of a difference between both of these, and you get the Epiphone and you take it home and you like it and you play it and it's great, you're in the right. You're not doing anything wrong. So I have to reiterate that here. And the reason I'm doing that now is because when it comes to the reissues versus even the regular custom shop, like the modern, there's the reissues, the Murphy Lab, and then the moderns when it comes to the custom shop. So the moderns are just like Gibson USA's built in the custom shop. That's why they have the 490R and 496R and 490T. They have different pickups in them. They have just regular Gibson USA pickups in them. When it comes to the VOS, the reissues, and the Murphy Lab, you get to a nerdy degree, which just immensely increases the price of what you're getting. And there's not really, unless you're paying extra for them to not put those things on there, doing a made to measure, it's going to cost you more to do that. But you know what I mean? You can't say, okay, well, excellent, I don't want to pay for the amber butyrate knobs, so please don't add an extra 30 or 40 probably dollars on it, or I don't want that specific switch tip. Can you just give me the 13-cent one instead of the $5 to $10 one? So I want to end this video. I'll have a little note afterwards, but I'm just going to read off from my list the nerdy stuff that's in here. Are we ready? This is how I did it. I always put notes here when it comes to these type of videos, and I usually skip over one or two. Like this one, I forgot to note, the Gibson Custom uses hot hide glue, which crystallizes when it actually solidifies and bonds the wood a little more, so you get a little more vibration in there. Good note. The Epiphone, I believe, uses tight bond glue just like the Gibson USA. And it doesn't crystallize, Nothing wrong with it. Oh man, yeah, I totally missed a couple. So also the volumes are dependent of each other. So basically that means if you want to go into the middle position and you have your neck volume turned all the way off, you're not going to hear anything. You have to have some volume on your neck and your bridge to get that dependent. Okay, so now on to the nerdy stuff here. So we have nickel finished with Murphy aging, lightly aged hardware, like I did note that. A no-wire ABR1 drilled directly into the body, I did that one. Nickel-plated brass saddles, I did that one. Lightweight aluminum stop bar. The pick guard is made of laminated cellulose acetate butyrate. We have an authentic 50s no-tube truss rod. The truss rod cover is authentic stepped 2-ply, so it looks different than the USA. The amber butyrate top hat, knobs, and silver inserts. The switch tip, if I use the secondary one, is amber Catalan. That amber Catalan means that I probably paid $30 for a little switch tip built into the price. The switch washer is replica cellulose acetate butyrate. So, okay. The jack plate cover is laminated cellulose acetate butyrate. And the control covers are black royalite, and the mounting rings are M69 cellulose acetate butyrate. So show of hands right now for, when I read that off, you're going like, you paid all this extra stuff. I would never need all of that stuff. Just the regular plastic knobs are good enough for me. Just put your hands up. I completely understand. I am a nerd. I think it's neat. I mean, it's a little, okay, I paid for it and stuff like that. But I mean, I think it's neat that they do like sourced parts and stuff like that. It's not 100% accurate. Which I always thought the reason that they stopped using vintage original specification is because, things like I think the acoustics they cured with sheep's urine. And like it's part of the finish, I think, was actually formaldehyde. Which, please don't use formaldehyde in your guitar, Gibson, to make it authentic and vintage original specification. But all of those different things, like it doesn't matter to a lot of people, and there's a lot of added value in that, or added amount added to the total of the guitar for it. And it just doesn't matter to a lot of people. A lot of the differences between the Epiphone and the Gibson USA, or the Gibson Custom, do not matter to people. And it's not a bad thing. If it doesn't matter to you, your wallet is going to be a lot happier than mine. I can tell you that much. And it really just matters what you think of your guitar and how it makes you feel when you're playing it. If you buy the Epiphone because you couldn't afford the Gibson, and you played the Gibson, and you're like, yeah, eventually I want to get that Gibson, then you know what? In the meantime, bond with that Epiphone, learn that Epiphone, so when you get the Gibson, maybe there's different things that you can learn and you can use to your advantage the experience that you've used from the Epiphone. If you bought the Epiphone because you liked the Epiphone over the Gibson, you couldn't really tell that much of a difference, maybe you didn't like the Nitro, perfect. If you were like me and, put a 30-year moratorium on actually playing a custom reissue because you almost have to sell a kidney to get one, then yeah, completely understand. I've had budgets, and I like saying this because it's very true, and to me it's eye-opening saying it. I've had budgets from $200 for a guitar where I literally could only scrape together $200, gonna buy that $200 guitar. My first real guitar was $300. All the way up to $10,000 on a guitar. I have a couple that are $10,000, and it makes me sick sometimes thinking of it, but I love them. The $10,000 guitars I cherish, I play all the time, they inspire me to play all the time. I have warm feelings about them. But I will never ever forget the feeling that I had playing my $300 Ibanez PR 1600 or 1660, the Rhodes style Flying V from Ibanez, when I was like 14. I'll never forget that. I had this feeling of it's me and my guitar against the world. I'll never ever forget that. So if you have the Epiphone, if you have the Gibson USA, if you have the Gibson Custom, the only thing that I care about is I really hope that you have that feeling of it's you and your guitar against the world. Because if that's the feeling that you have the right guitar. Thanks for watching.